Welcome, welcome everyone. We'll give it a couple of minutes to let people put down their dinner, have the last, I don't know, shot of whiskey, I don't know, whatever people do, and then put the kids to bed. No, too early. Sit down in front of the computer. Ignore the news and come to the Wales report. Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's keeping warm, doing some sit-ups or something, so they can avoid putting on the heating yet. You know, a bit of exercise just to keep warm. Waiting with bated breath Liz Truss's speech tomorrow. But waiting with bated breath for Hughie Ranka-Davies's speech tonight.
I told you, Jackie, I'm not doing a full-blown speech. I'm doing a chat. Fireside chat. That's what I'm going to do.
Can we be a beachside chat? One more minute and then we'll start, yeah? I'll make sure that everyone's connected to the audio. It doesn't look like everyone is yet, so wait a minute. Okay, I propose that we start. Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone, Finanda, everyone, to the Wales report for the Cooperative Party Conference 2022, or maybe 2021. Some party conferences are from last year, etc., that you weren't able to have it. Well, I think it's a good innovation that we have a separation of various reports over particular nights, because hopefully everyone has a chance to be there and to hear it as well. And this talk, well, this fireside chat, as Hughie Ranka-Davies has just said, is being recorded. So if you do not want to be on camera, then please take your camera off. I hope everyone can hear everything and you stay connected. So we're going to keep everyone muted for the duration, apart from myself and Hugh, of course, and until such time as we've got questions. If you do have questions towards the end, I presume that that's the format that's going to, after the chat, then we'll, and some of the discussion, then we'll unmute you, and please indicate whether it's virtually or in the chat function that you want to ask a question or make a comment. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's absolute delight to be here tonight and to introduce Hughie Ranka-Davies, who thank you for the lollipops. That's really cute. Tonight, and going to have a chat about Wales and all the cooperative values, principles, and policies that the Welsh Labour government, is progressing with. We're right in the middle of a cost of living crisis, and we need the economy that puts fairness, democracy, and equity at its heart. We absolutely need that. We're not getting it, I would argue, by the Conservative government in Westminster. we cannot go back to the same old model, which got us here either. So we need action to promote cooperative models in business, housing, energy, and so much more. How we run the economy has to change, in other words. And with that respect, the Cooperative Party and the Cooperative in general have lots of very valuable ideas to give. And as the global movement of over 1 billion members worldwide, cooperation has made massive difference to social and economic progress globally. Well, unlike our current economic system, which has been widening inequality and deprivation, especially in the last few years, cooperation provides workers and members with a stake in their business, home and local community assets. And that's a really good thing, to have a stake in not just the means of production, but other businesses as well. So the conference, From Crisis to Cooperation, will discuss how cooperation can provide a much needed solution to the crises our countries face, from the cost of living crisis to the climate crisis, as well as providing practical campaign sessions to inspire action locally. Over 400 cooperators and visitors will be at the Cooperative Conference coming up this weekend. And we'll be meeting in person and virtually in Leeds. So the full details of the conference programs are online, and you can have a look at that. It is being sponsored by USDOR as well, and I wanted to make sure that we know that we've got union support for cooperative values and initiatives. So fellow cooperators, Wales is at the forefront of many initiatives and of working collaboratively as well as cooperatively that Hugh Iranka-Davis will highlight tonight in his fireside chat. It's an exciting time to be a cooperator. We are moving forward to a Labour government that is not far away now, I predict. Heaven help us, we all need it desperately. The time is right for further influence the incoming government and our own Welsh government here in Wales. So I hand you over to the fantastic, wonderful chair of the cooperative group in the Senedd, with Hugh Iranka-Davis. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Jackie. Thank you very much indeed. And hello to everybody. Lovely to see some of you here on screen, and for those of you listening with your cameras switched off as well. I hope I don't send you to sleep over the next 15 or 20 minutes, which is what I've been asked to speak for on some of the big themes within Wales at the moment, and some of the interesting policy areas, because we always said with devolution, we're 20 years young now, it was going to be that laboratory of experimentation. Well, it's certainly proven that way in terms of cooperative values and putting those values into practical applications with policies as well. So I've been asked to look at some things, some interesting things, which might tickle your fancy here as cooperators. That includes the work that we've been doing with the other cooperators in Wales alongside a proposal for a Wales form, not quite the same as the Mark Hora law, but a Wales form of legislation and other measures to go even further, even more boldly than the Welsh Government currently is on employee ownership within Wales. We're doing a lot of fantastic things in Wales already, but we think we can stiffen the resolve of ministers and actually propel it a bit faster as well. And we're in some interesting discussions. So I'll touch on that. I'm going to touch as well on the issue of co-ops and social care, but particularly focusing on the issue of children. And it's been a big discussion here in Wales, the issue of taking the profit out of care for looked after children. It's been a long-term ambition. Mark Drake, for the First Minister, is hugely committed to it, as is Julie Morgan, the Minister in charge, as are all of us as cooperators and Labour members. It's also worked its way into the Plaid Cymru Welsh Government Labour cooperation agreement. Very interesting that here in Wales, we're well over the Rubicon. We've been doing this for years about working with other parties and getting the best ideas together. Well, it's the nature of cooperation. Well, we have not a coalition, not something formal like that, but we have a series of measures within the cooperation agreement, one of which is to take the profit out of looked after children's care, but also to look at a national care service. And that's quite really exciting in terms of cooperative principles into action, because what could we do there with all the challenges that care has within Wales with cooperative values, not just with employee ownership, but that wider involving the stakeholders within the running of care. So I'm going to look at that. I'm going to look at cooperative applications within community energy as well, and particularly looking at the work that's been done between Welsh Government and Compass, Wales Cooperative Centre, and EGNI, an offshoot of Awel Amen Tawe, and the idea of getting people investing in and taking a stake within community energy, whether that's solar or wind farms and so on, and how we could do more of that in Wales. I'm also going to look at the issue of housing and what we're doing here in Wales with cooperative housing, and some of the models that we're looking at, some of the challenges, I have to say as well, because it is challenging ground to get genuinely cooperative models of housing, not just off the ground, but to make them long-lasting and sustainable as well. But I'll be looking at that. And also, and congratulations to them, by the way, because we couldn't do a lot of this in Wales without them. I'll be looking at the relationship with Compass, formerly the Wales Cooperative Centre, and the specialists and the policy advisors and the lobbyists and the experts within there who do give so much support, with Welsh Government support as well, to turning over this fertile soil that we have in Wales for cooperative principles and putting them into practice with actions as well. Now, in doing that, can I just take you back just a moment before I start? It's worth reminding for those colleagues I can see here on screen who are from Wales, but also from those who might be listening from outside of Wales, interested to hear how things are going in Wales from a cooperative perspective. Well, just to remind we have a record number of cooperative members who are now members of the Senate. It's a record number. It's been going up election after election. It is quite remarkable now, the scale of the cooperative group. We are the second largest. If you put us, ignore the fact that we're sister party of the Labour Party. If you take us as a political entity, we are the second biggest bloc to Labour within the Senate. Simple as. But not only that, we also have the biggest bloc of ministers ever as well, including cabinet ministers as well as deputy ministers as well, although they all sit in the same cabinet. So all the stuff, good stuff we're doing on the environment, on housing, etc., 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 it's been driven by cooperative members as well as Welsh Labour, cooperative ministers as well as Welsh Labour ministers. That is crucial. It means that for me and Hugh and Jackie and Casey from the Wales Cooperative Council, when he came in to meet with our group in the Senedd, we can get the year of ministers. We don't have to wait 3 months for a meeting. We can say to them, hey, you're a cooperator, come on in. But we can also remind them of their programme of government, because in the Welsh Labour government's programme for government, when we came in only 1 year ago, remember, just over a year ago, it had in there many ambitious cooperative ideas. And within that, it had supporting cooperative housing, community food strategy to tackle hunger, so important now in terms of the real emergencies that we're currently facing, and what we're hearing is getting worse as well. Worker ownership in many different sectors, cooperative solutions to local regeneration and high street solution. So not looking to the market to fix everything, but how do we use foundational economy principles and cooperative principles to actually make a sustainable high street and local economies as well, and so much more. And as Jackie has just reminded us, everything now, all of those commitments that we came into, we had not envisaged that we were going to hit now what is now the tsunami in front of us of this cost of living crisis, being made worse, I have to say, every day by the sheer incompetence and uncertainty and U-turns and schoolboy economics of the Conservative Party. But we're going to have to deal with that here in Wales, as well as our colleagues across in different devolved areas as well, and in England. Worth pointing out, I'm not a minister, but what I'm going to give you is a flavour of what's going on in Wales, and I'm going to do it very much in a cooperative manner. So this is not going to be a hell for leather presentation and me telling you exactly the way the law is. This is going to be opening up to a discussion afterwards, and I'm looking to your ideas as well that might help us in what we're doing in Wales, within the Senedd and elsewhere. Oh, and I forgot to mention, by the way, because Casey and Hugh Lewis will turn me off, in giving a report from Wales, although as a Senate member, I should also mention our PCCs are cooperative members. We got an increasing number of Labour councillors in Wales who are cooperative members. A big stride forward, thanks to Hugh and others, and word of mouth, actually, of what we are, the great things we're doing. And we can build on that going forward as well. And if I've missed anybody, my apologies. So let me turn to some of those items there. I mentioned, first of all, in terms of, well, let's take them one at a time there. Let's look at that issue of what we can do within social care, but also within care generally, and removing the profit agenda from the care of looked after children. You'd hear me mention Compass, or the Wales Cooperative Centre as it formerly was, a few times this evening. It's no accident. Their expertise in many of these areas is very helpful in the Welsh context. They produced a brilliant report back in June 2021, which was focusing on predominantly care homes in Wales, residential care homes. I'd strongly recommend it because it looked at the idea of promoting cooperatives and other social enterprise models within Wales. It was fascinating. I don't think you could see a similar example of some groundbreaking thought being put forward in the context over the other side of Offa's Dyke at this moment. In looking at how you could use cooperative and social value objectives within the care sector, and we all know the challenges the care sector is currently under. Could you actually bring forward models that you could apply that to the residential care setting, the most tricky care sector, because of its fragility, because of the issues of liability, because of the issues of how do you deal with a market that is exceptionally fragmented already, where there are many independent and private sector operators, some local authorities, where the cooperative sector hardly has a look in. But I recommend that document to you because it's also been on ministers' desks as well. And it put forward that whilst it recognises you're not going to flick a switch overnight, and actually local authorities are going to continue to have a significant interest in this area as well, because they often end up as the last person standing, the last entity standing when private operators, as we've seen over the years, perhaps for various reasons, pack up and go away. What they showed was how we could work with local authorities to actually develop models of cooperative models and social value models within the residential care sector. And in fact, that 19% of all social enterprises within Wales, in the study that they did a year ago, operated within the health and social care sector already. And they're big and small. They're tiny ones of small groups of people who've come together, stakeholders with multiple objectives, where there are parents and children and people with additional support needs who come together with practitioners, with specialists to say, let's put a cooperative together of a small scale to make this work, because that will meet our needs far better than some statutory agency or some private company down the road. But what this report looks like from the Wales Cooperative Centre is, can you make that bigger? And it actually starts to sketch out clear models of how that could work in Wales, where local authorities could work with cooperative entities to actually manage and run sustainably for the long term residential care in Wales. Now, what could we do with that? Because then the challenges we currently have over not just the fragility of the market, but actually paying and rewarding people better. They are part of the care solution, not simply people who turn up and people who are increasingly fleeing the sector because they can get better pay on, I wouldn't mention any particular supermarket, but on a supermarket without the worry and the responsibility and the challenges of doing night shifts in a care home and so on. What if they were part of the running and the management of their care provision? Well, that report structures it, and it's on the desks of ministers being looked at. And just to say, in terms of that and the wider care sector, let me just take you back to the 2014 Social Care Act. It actually specifies in there, and I say this deliberately to show how fertile the ground is in Wales. Things don't happen overnight, but this is because we've taken forward groundbreaking legislation. The 2014 Social Care Act, section 16 says that we will promote social enterprises, cooperatives, user-led services in the third sector. A local authority must promote the development in its area of cooperative organisations or arrangements to provide care and support and preventative services. Now, it's been a long journey since then. We haven't seen these getting up off the ground on a large scale, but the legislation is there. The models are now being worked by Compass for ministers to wrestle with. And it's for us now as cooperators to argue this in meetings that we're in with Welsh Government, with local, in the local town halls and elsewhere to say, can we do this? Let's pioneer, let's actually do it. I want to turn then to the other really interesting aspect. And I'm only flicking from one thing to another here, but the aspect of removing profit from the care of looked after children. Many of you will be familiar with this. Some of you will be counsellors. Some of you will yourselves have had involvement with families where children, very young children often, with significant additional needs of care and assistance that cannot be treated that cannot be looked after, cannot be cared for in normal facilities, they often end up not just going out of county, not just out of Bridgend to somewhere else in Rhondda Cynon Taf or to Monmouth or wherever. They often end up going out of country. They'll end up in Scotland, far from their wider support network, far from their families. And it'll be run by private companies very often, independent companies. The profit motive in care for looked after children is massive. And I'm not saying these companies are wicked and bad and so on, but surely we should actually be saying, let's get the monies that we invest into that invested in the young children and the support and the care they want, and let's do it closer to home. Let's work again under those models with the local authorities, but also with cooperative models as well, to say, well, can we do this better? If the parents, the young people, the clinicians, the experts, the support agencies work together and say, well, actually, we can devise a model here where in Bridgend, in Merthyr, in Flintshire, etc., we can develop that flexible provision that will be tailored around that individual, and where the profits don't go to investors or shareholders, the profits go back into better care, better treatment, better wraparound for that child and young person. Now, the great thing with that is there is a commitment, a clear commitment with the Welsh Government to do this. They actually set up an expert board to work these proposals through. It's currently ongoing. It includes, by the way, local authorities, but it also includes specialists in the field, but it also includes young people who've been through care themselves. This is proper co-production. This is everybody at the table helping to devise the solution. And I've spoken to our Minister, Julie Morgan, who's this expert board is reporting to as they try to crunch through these difficult issues, because it won't happen overnight, but it will happen. It's a clear Welsh Government commitment. We will take the profit motive out of care for looked after children. We will do it, and we will do it in this Senate term. But in doing that, we've got to work with the partners out there, including local authorities. So these are difficult, challenging conversations about how you get from where we are now to where we want to be. Welsh Government is putting money into it as well, millions of pounds, in order to help this transition as well. But we will do it. And I have to say, everybody sitting around, from what I'm told by Julie Morgan, around that table is committed to doing it and working together in a properly cooperative approach to making this work. Now, if we do that, we will be the first nation in the UK to actually take the profit out of care for looked after children, and so we should be. That great laboratory of experimentation, we're making it very real indeed. Let me turn to something entirely different I mentioned there, which was the support for community ownership of renewables. There's lots of different models out there, some of which are shareholder examples, and some exciting models out there as well, where people can, there's one not far from me in my own constituency in Ogmore with Ribble Energy, where you can buy into the ownership of wind turbines on top of the field. It's great to see innovations like that coming in. But actually, there's something even more exciting than that, I would argue, in Wales, and it's where you've got genuine, because the investors, even with Ribble, could be from anywhere around the country. It's great, and a lot of people invest in it because of ethical reasons, and that's wonderful. But it's not actually local community ownership. It's not local people. There aren't many people from Gilbacor investing in that particular energy proposal, good as it is, on the hill directly opposite them. So what we're trying to do in Wales is actually localise that energy and put the resource and the funding around enabling local people to get involved in their own local schemes, whether it's solar or whether it's wind energy. So local communities can get involved. And one of the ways we've done that, again, with Compass's help, I keep saying Compass, formerly, it's like one of those singers, formerly known as the Wales Cooperative Centre, now known as Compass, just in case anybody hasn't seen all their press releases on it. So Welsh Government is funding Wales Compass in order to incentivise EGNI. EGNI, some of you might have come across. EGNI is a real leader in this field. It's a spin-off of what some of you will know as Awal Amantawi from, which is still going itself, by the way, doing lots of great stuff there. One of the pioneers in this field themselves. But EGNI is out there right now, working in Newport, working in Neath, working across Wales on renewable, sustainable energy projects, working with communities to get them involved in the ownership and the running of it. And it's working. And it needs support, and we need to show and prove to people all the time that it works. But we're putting the money behind doing that, and that's significant. Imagine what we could do if this was happening over the border and we had Ed Miliband running the department over there, and he was doing exactly the same on an England basis as well on a bigger scale. But hey, you know, we are the laboratory. What we do in Wales first will get replicated elsewhere. So we're doing that as well. Now, I just wanted to touch on a couple of other aspects. First of all, on housing, and I know this is a whistle-stop tour. We've had some great engagement in the Senedd itself with some of the cooperative and social value housing organisations within Wales, people like Merthyr Housing and so on. But it actually goes far deeper than that. And some of this is hard lifting, I have to say as well, particularly for the organisations out there. Back in March of this year, Compass published some very interesting material around how we can do more on this. But it flags up some of the existing projects, how they're succeeding, but also the challenges. So if you look at, for example, Goir Community Land Trust there. I mean, this is, for anybody who's followed some of the American examples with community land ownership and what you can do with them. It's quite instructive. It's a much smaller scale than some of the big ones that have been done elsewhere, but it's a multi-generational group based on the Gower Peninsula, looking to find affordable housing, to provide affordable housing for around 9 local families. Said this was heavy lifting. Of course, one of the challenges that you find on a place like the Gower is the astronomical land prices, which brings us to another issue about how we should reform perhaps land value and, on a wider basis, which is a live debate here in the Senedd, by the way, as we speak there. But that's provided a challenge for that group to find an affordable plot of land with the near to services and amenities at the right price to provide genuinely affordable housing. But they're not giving up, and they've got support to keep on exploring the way that could happen. Abu Dhabi Communities Housing Trust. They were set up to build sustainable housing and workplaces for local people. Again, they've got challenges in finding the appropriate land within the village, which has got a very high number of second homes. And you can see how this ties into the wider debates in the Senedd, not just around land value, but second homes and affordability and so on. These things have to tie together and key together. So 43% of the housing stock within the Abu Dhabi area is second home ownership. I mean, that's quite staggering. How do you actually develop affordable housing on a cooperative basis when you have that? But again, there's support being given with the Abu Dhabi Community Trust to help them take community ownership of a mixed use site centered on a building site built by one of the group's grandparents, and including housing which the group intend to make available to priced out local people. Cooperative solutions, difficult, challenging, but we find a way through it. And doing the cooperative approach of saying we'll give the support behind it, and then if a group gets off the ground, that group will teach others how to do it as well. That's part of what we're about. Or Bro Machno Housing Partnership. It's made up of local authorities, housing associations, community organisations, local residents, all of whom came together to explore a range of different approaches to support the sustainabilities of communities falling victim once again to the impact of second homes and holiday homes. So lots of exciting projects going on around Wales. And I guess the question for us as cooperators is, with the support of Welsh Government, with the support of people now who have expertise in doing it, and you leading by example and sharing those examples of best practice, including the obstacles, how do we ramp this up? And that brings us to my final point, Jackie, before I shut up. I did say to Jackie at the start, I didn't know whether I'd speak for 5 minutes or for the whole hour there, but I promise you, I'm genuinely cutting this short. I'm just going to say a little bit about the work that's been done on employee ownership. And I'm going to refer you, if you haven't read it already and you're interested in this stuff, go and look at the CLES report, the CLES report, which they brought forward for us, called Owning the Workplace. Sorry, I say they brought forward for us. It's an independent report. But I'm pleased to say that they produced that report following some inspiration from discussions with Compass, with us, with Hugh Lewis, the political officer in Wales, and with others who thought, well, actually, we can see that there is probably potential here to build on the existing commitment within Welsh Government, which is, by the way, to double the employee ownership in Wales over the length of this Senedd. But we think, looking at places like the Macora law within Italy, but also looking at other areas where this has been done, we do think that there is a role for legislation. So CLES went away and independently produced a report. And let me just touch on what they brought back, because Hugh and I and Jackie and others now will be meeting with Vaughan. We've got a launch event this month actually on this report where we'll be speaking alongside CLES, the people who put the report forward. Vaughan Gethin will be there, the Minister for the Cooperative Economy. We have that in Welsh Government to listen to it, and we'll be meeting him subsequently in an expert round table to bottom this out. The challenge Vaughan Gethin gave to us is, show us that we can do legislation in Wales and it doesn't contravene legislative competence, that we're not treading on Westminster's toes and they challenge us that we can't do it, but also show how it would work, because it's not the same situation as Italy. So the CLES report has recommended we do bring forward not Macora legislation, but a Welsh version of what they call Macora-inspired legislation, which would define employee ownership, put employee ownership objectives on a statutory footing. And why do they say that? It's because it drives change. Sometimes what law does is it stiffens the sinews of ministers and says, we don't just have ambition, we don't just have rhetoric, we are now obliged to go for this in a big way. It would impose a duty to promote employee ownership in economic development and business support. So all of those vehicles that Welsh Government has set up, not just cooperative vehicles, but business development vehicles and others, would have to have a duty to actually promote this agenda as well. It wouldn't be the answer in every situation, but it would be the answer in many. And at the moment, it's not even getting to the table. It would require local business vitality assessments. Why that? Because what Macora has shown where it's been applied in Italy is that those businesses that have employee ownership show more resilience when faced with economic downturns and challenges. The workers pull together because it is their business, their factory, their operation, their service that they are providing together. They will find a way to weather the storm through thick and thin. They are simply more resilient. The legislation would ensure that public procurement chains agree to the principles of worker buyouts and employee ownership. It would impose a duty to engage Social Business Wales and the Development Bank of Wales as well, another great innovation here in Wales. And it would provide financial support and advice for worker buyouts. And if people think this cannot work, well, there are 47, I think, at the moment. There might be more. If Derek Walker is on this call or any of his colleagues, he might tell me how many there are in Wales at the moment. But of course, we know that one of the most legendary worker buyouts in Wales was actually Tower Colliery. When they sat down in that mile, mine until they persuaded Thatcher and McGregor to actually give them the keys because they believed there was a future in it. That's resilience, and that's what employee buyouts can do. But we've got to provide the financial support and the advice for them to do it. We've got Compass, we've got great organisations in business support in Wales, but they need to be talking about it. So that's what our legislation would do. So we are meeting, we're having the launch event shortly, then we're going to be meeting with Vaughan Gethin in a round table. So it's quite exciting times. We have not persuaded yet, we haven't had the sign off, we've not had the green light. We got a lot of work to do yet to persuade a Welsh government that constantly tells us, quite understandably, we've got the EU retained law stuff coming down the line. If you thought the post-Brexit stuff was busy, we're probably talking about 2,500 pieces of legislation and statutory instruments working its way down in 12 months, just over a period of 12 months. So they will tell us, it's tough here, we haven't got the capacity. They'll also tell us, do we need to do this because we've got a great commitment already? I guess our argument, looking at Hugh and Jackie and others on this call to Welsh Government is, hey, if we can draft the legislation and if we can find the opportunity to do it, just give us wind in our sails and we'll take this through. We'll help you stiffen your sinews. So look, lots of exciting stuff going on in Wales, but against all of that, we've got this incredible backdrop at the moment. It isn't just the cost of living crisis. And I just want to end with one note of realism in my report from Wales and report from the Senate. Everything we're hearing at the moment, and this isn't politics, it's hard reality. We're looking at something, we're looking at the single biggest hit in terms of the budget in Wales for all our spending, school, transport, housing, everything that we've ever seen, because we understand that there is going to be no uplift for the budget in Wales from the UK government to fund what we're currently doing. That's going to mean really hard choices. On top of that, we are hearing words from the Conservative conference that they might even look at other efficiencies within government. You know, code word for further cuts. They're going to have to fund, they're going to be told by the OBR that they can't fund this on the never never with borrowing that falls on our children and grandchildren. So they're going to come forward, I have no doubt, the end of this month with some drastic cuts. That's a horrendous environment to do the stuff that we want to do as cooperation. But all I would say to you in a word of encouragement is, if we can't do it as cooperators, as a Welsh Labour government, with our values, then nobody can weather the storm, and we will do it. And we'll do these exciting things as well to push forward cooperative principles and values into actions and policies and things that matter to people on the ground, whether it's food justice, whether it's the cost of living crisis, or whether it's some of the innovations I've just been talking about. We're committed to it. We have a Welsh government in which it's now embedded. And that means we're in a better position, I think, than anybody else to take this forward. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you all. I've probably gone on too long there, but more than happy to get into a discussion or take questions. But I'd better point out, I'm not a Welsh Government minister. I'm just an evangelist for this stuff.
Yeah. That was some fireside chat. Thank you so much, Hugh. I mean, you can see that there's so much going on in Wales. They used to say that the UK was punching above its weight. Well, I think I always have thought that Wales punches way above its weight as well, with innovative ideas and trying to solve problems rather than creating problems. So I've got several hands up now. Thank you so much for all of that. I think the first person I saw was Malcolm King. I'm going to go across my screen, which is Sonia and Mary. Is that okay? And try and keep we've got a few minutes, but please keep your questions or comments relatively short so that everyone can come in. Thank you.
Right, well, if that's me, well, thank you very much. I'm Malcolm King. I'm a County Borough Councillor from Wrexham, have been for about 33 or 4 years, and run a children's organisation in where I also represent, which has got the second highest level of child poverty in Wales, which is unfortunate. A long time ago, 30 odd years ago, I was, soon after I was elected, became chair of social services, and then digging up all the child abuse stuff in in children's homes in North East Wales, and that's become a sort of 40-year journey. And one of the key things that came out of that was about children's homes was the poor recruiting processes, and that you get a job in any children's home anywhere, walk off the street and you get a job, no checks made. So a lot of those things have changed since the judicial inquiry and so on. But one of the things that stands out is in Britain is that people who work in children's homes have a poor status. They're poorly paid, poorly trained, poor status, whereas in Scandinavian countries where they have pedagogue training, the highest status is if you work in a children's home.
Yeah.
So it's extremely important to do, as you said, Hugh, and thank you very much for that mouth-watering romp through so many hugely important issues that I'd like to comment on all of them. But the point is, unless we change the way that we approach the staffing in children's homes, I mean, I absolutely agree. Having it just making money out of people's misfortune is immoral and could never work. But we've got to do more than that. And having led most of the statutory children's organisation in England and Wales for the police and local authorities, and having sort of spent lots of time making policies and then some years later wondering why they didn't work, is that we don't always give enough. We often don't give enough attention to the implementation of it, and making sure there aren't practical things that just get in the way. So although we might change the structure of ownership of children's homes, it's got to go further than that. Otherwise, it won't work. It's the most difficult job working with kids. That's my job. I run a children's organisation in probably one of the most challenging areas in Wales, and you've got to do more than just change the structure.
Yeah.
So
that's
my plea.
Thank you. Hugh, do you want to take a couple at a time?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep. So it's Sonia next. Would you like to go, please? Thank you very much, Malcolm.
Thank you. Good to be here, and I'm a cooperative councillor in Neath Talbot and deputy leader of group, and I'm also a founder member of Parliamentary and EGNI, and been involved in cooperation for many years in Neath Talbot, and wider across Wales. But my focus here, building on all that Hugh had to say, has been something that's been dear to my heart and to others locally, who've been involved for many, many years in community enterprises running childcare.
Yeah.
We are seeing a huge expansion by Welsh Government in childcare. It's fabulous to see. It's excellent work, and I've only got praise for that. However, childcare wages, childcare costs are through the roof and causing issues for us as childcare providers. 32 years we've been going, and we're really struggling at the moment due to the rising costs and rising cost of living, but also paying our staff minimum wage because we can't afford to charge more than those costs to people who are only earning minimum wage. And it's a huge problem going forward. Social enterprise people really, really battling with consciences, given the amount we're paying staff and involving staff, given that they're committed and they're engaged in helping run the organisation. So it's a problem, and I really would like support from the cooperative movement to look at that alongside social care. It's not just adults that need that care, it's our children. If we're expanding it, we need to stop and think about the workers involved.
Thank you, Sonia. Hugh?
Oh yeah, sure. I'll come back on this too, because there's actually a link here, and it's to do with the staff and the poor pay that is endemic right across the sector. And I know Mary's coming in next, and she'll know the same situation. How on earth do you get from where we are now to a situation where you do pay people with immense responsibilities for looking after either children in childcare settings, childcare and education settings, which is so important for their development. And you want really good people who are not just looking after them, but are helping them in their wider social development as well. Or you're looking at adults or young people that need assisted care for independent living, or you're looking at dementia units like the one in my patch in Ogmore, which needs really well motivated, well trained staff and employers that can afford to actually pay them that money and so on, or models of ownership that can afford to pay them, and we're not doing it. So in the light of my pessimistic end of what I just said, I think we do have to be honest and have this discussion as well about how do we, across the UK, but also in Wales, can we find ways in which we can improve that, not overnight, because we haven't got a magic wand, but is there a way that we can actually lever in additional funding into care in its wider context, and then decide where that funding actually goes to? And would it be to improvements in care generally, additional places for people who need care, but would it also go to staff pay remuneration, but also skills development, professionalization of staff, etc., etc. Now, we did set on a journey on that in the last Senedd, where Mark Drakeford commissioned work to be done, looking at both the economics of how we could use our tax variant powers to look at injecting more into care if the UK government didn't do this themselves. And as we know, the UK government has once again run a mile from actually willing the means to put money into care. So I think that discussion, it's early, but I think it has to be back on the table again. What can we do within our powers now, including tax variant powers, levying powers, and so on, to see whether we can get more money in, and over time then make it an attractive proposition to be working within. But also, I have to say, to devise those models, to come back to our earlier discussion, where staff genuinely feel part and parcel of the place where they work. Now, that doesn't have to be purely cooperative models, but it should be. There are some good examples, for example, of domiciliary care within the Barry Penarth area that I've been and visit. What they do there is they actually empower the individual carers, not just the supervisors, to be creative in what is best for the person that they're caring for, to have some latitude in the way they use limited budgets to devise something that is of interest to the individual, not simply go by, I've got X number of minutes to do X, Y, and Z, and now I'm gone. So, for example, and I've seen it in action, where those staff are much more part of the solution, because they will say to an older person who is pretty much housebound, but say, well, what would you really like to do? And he said, well, I haven't been there for years, 20 years or more, but I want to go and watch a rugby match. Don't care what rugby match it is, but a rugby match. And they literally use their very limited budget, but with his bus pass, to go on a bus with him, to commit their time to go on a bus with him to see the match and back. So some of the solutions are in pay, some of them are in conditions, and we can't run away from that. Some of them are in the models where we get people to feel that if they work in the care profession, anywhere in the care profession, they are empowered to use their judgment and expertise and discretion. So they're not a cog in the wheel, they are the wheel.
Thanks, Hugh. We've got 10 minutes left. So we've got two questions. So it's Mary and David, please.
Thanks. Hugh, I wasn't going to talk about terms and conditions for once, so I shall try and restrain myself. But Hugh also didn't mention that he was previously a social care minister as well. And I know, really gets and understands this. I just wanted to very quickly kind of say ask about three things, really. One is, you mentioned the work that Compass did. They also published some advice for commissioners and procurers on promoting social value December 2020, and I think it got a bit lost in all the pandemic issues that were going on. But one of the things that I think is really good in that we should be promoting more as well, looking at how the kind of current composition of the sector is about promoting the values of the organisation, not just what sector it was in. So it was very much about how do we commission and procure care in a way that promotes fair work, that promotes decarbonisation, you know, all the good things that we would expect to see from cooperative models, but actually how can we spread that promotion right across the sector as it currently exists. I was going to put it in the chat, but I don't seem to be able to kind of chat to everybody, but I can pass it to the hosts, because I think it's a really, really good positive piece of work. Second question is, I think there's sometimes been some resistance as well within the labour movement to cooperative models from trade union comrades who would prefer to see everything go back in-house. How do we convince them that co-ops can be good employers and actually you know, should sit alongside this as part of what we're looking for? And the third thing I just wanted to say is on the children's agenda, and I don't work in the children's sphere, but I do sort of end up on the periphery of meetings with heads of children's services, etc. And I understand exactly what we're trying to do, but I do think we need to work really hard on the implementation, because at the moment I think some of the things that we're doing in part of this agenda are drying up supply without additional supply in place. And I hear heads of children's services saying they just can't place children locally because of this agenda at the moment, and they're having to place children further away and potentially in unregulated settings as well. And so, you know, I would just caution being really careful in terms of kind of working through how this works. Thank you.
David, thanks.
Thank you, Chair, for and thank you, Hugh, for the rousing contribution that you made. I'd just like to express a little bit of caution. I have concerns about the way in which people confuse the word collaboration with cooperation. And I think it's really important that we value collaboration, but we need to understand what the cooperative difference is. And essentially, as people know, it's about expanding the social economy as distinct from the private sector. And with that, the opportunity for engagement, participation, and so on. And that hasn't always come clear when people are actually talking about cooperatives or cooperation in a very loose sense. The report that Mary referred to that came out of Compass around spreading social values that got lost in COVID was very interesting. But if you look carefully at the history since 2008, it's a recognition of the real difficulty of building a multi-stakeholder social care movement in Wales. And although you actually referred to the 2014 legislation or the guidance that came out the following year, the key breakthrough that actually occurred would have happened irrespective of the legislation. And it arose from the relationship that some of us had with Adrian Roper, the chief executive at Cooperative Cooperative. And with a smart lawyer from Birmingham, we were able to reconcile the charitable status with the combined with the cooperative status for that organisation, which is the largest social care NGO in Wales. Got a turnover in excess, I think, of about 21 million. They employ, I think, 1,200 people. They've got 800 people that they actually work with a range of really serious disabilities. So Cooperative is attempting to root itself in the way it actually relates to communities. But I don't find the same message with some of the organizations that have been mentioned by yourself and Sonia in the conversation. I invest in both those organisations. I don't sense any rootedness in our locality here in Newport in terms of what they're actually doing. So I'm just being a little bit cautious around any development in social care at the moment related to existing funding models. We don't want to end up in serious difficulty because that will be the case unless the funding model is changed. Switching very slightly to my, or decisively to my
David, we've got one more hand up and we've got like 3 minutes left.
Okay.
So is that okay?
The group's
that we
position,
take
the Labour group's position
David,
then on...
the other David's one question
Okay,
as
Labour
well.
group's position on Food Policy Council. It seems to me to be not a very good idea at the moment with all the pressures that you're referring to earlier on. And shouldn't the focus be solely on providing nutritious free school meals where appropriate to young people rather than spreading our money too thinly? Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you, David. Hugh, are you okay to just take one more quickly?
Yeah, go ahead, and I'll answer really quickly. Yeah.
So David, thank you. Are you unmuted?
Can you hear me now? Yep, okay. Just very quickly, during the Labour Party conference last week, there was a co-op fringe, and I was at it with Jim McMahon, and it was on food justice. And my concern is it's not so much food justice as food security, because you know, I mean, it goes without saying, with the current global economic situation. I mean, I did mention this previously at the conference in Llandudno, but I think it's probably the number one issue, and that in Wales, if we can use any means possible of using the cooperative models to boost the community resilience, you know, and that is from production, from the planting of the seeds right through to the table. And it has many benefits, not least mental well-being for the individuals taking part, involvement, community cohesion, and you know, sort of making us less reliant on these very weak, very fragile, just-in-time supply chains with the supermarkets. So I really like if Hugh could sort of see, you know, if we can raise that. I mean, I have mentioned this to Vaughan as well, you know, that to put this as a number one issue.
Thank you very much, David. Over to Hugh now.
Okay, thank you all for your comments. And if I can't respond to them all in great detail, I've taken them on board, and I'm also making notes as well. And these sort of conversations really do help there. Let me touch on a couple of key things there. Different models within care, not just within children's care, but wider. Particularly, we're coming from a place where it's a very diverse and dispersed sort of care model that we have out there with domiciliary, residential care, and the wider care sector. That's recognised in the work that's going on very much. And what's also recognised very specifically within the remit that Albert is taking forward with that advisory board is that there's going to be a need for significant investment in additional capacity within the sector, particularly within the focus on children's care for looked after children. But also, I think the same, Mary, would be said of the wider care sector as well. The challenges coming down the line are screaming at us, and we've got to find the additional investment in there in capacity. You mentioned the issue of resistance to cooperative models. I sometimes pick that up as well, because it's almost like, well, yeah, it's all very well and good, but isn't it better just to have them in-house? With all the terms and conditions protected, but actually, what some of the work that Compass has done has shown that, and it really does reflect that there are different models out there that we could look at, but it does sketch a way through for local authorities to start in a very well-crafted way to spin off parts of their organisations into cooperative models or some other social value-led organisations. And I do take the point that was just being made there by David as well. Social value organisations are not automatically cooperative organisations, and vice versa. Cooperative models need to be in there, but there could also be other social value organisations that get the funds going back in, that are multi-stakeholder owned and managed organisations that don't call themselves a cooperative, but could also have clear social purposes within what they're trying to do. But they flag up, it's everything there from community interest companies to charities, trade in arms, community benefit societies, employee ownership models, which we've talked about already, or multi-stakeholder cooperators, and so on. But what we do need to focus on, I think, is this idea of that these organizations, they have at their core purpose the care that they provide and the reinvestment within the people that they look after, as opposed to shareholder dividends and so on now. Let me just turn to the issue very quickly on food. The cooperation agreement, as you know, with Plaid Cymru has meant that we've been able to accelerate what we've already been doing with schools in terms of primary school food. It's a bit of a challenge for some of our schools going into the autumn. Some of our schools in parts of Wales, we took the canteens out 20 years ago. So some of them at the moment are having meals, but they are good, but cold packed meals. But we'll get to the point by the end of this year where we actually have hot meals. We're going to reinvest in it and do it. But you'll also notice that beyond the cooperation agreement, Welsh Labour government has committed now to extend that actually through the school holidays up until the end of next spring as well. And if we can do it further, David, we'll do it even, and others, we'll do it even further again. So we're going beyond that. But I think it's also bringing together that network of people. So within my local area, there's a food group that meets with the local authority, with the food pantry, the food banks, the big box Boyd providers, the local men's shed, CDT, a local community organisation who provide subsidised meals. They all come together in order to say, how do we coordinate so we're not competing to get provision to every part of the community that we get to? That's the benefit of that deep down community reach that we have. And I'll tell you what, if that's not cooperation in action, nothing is. It isn't called a cooperative, but it is certainly that idea of finding a cooperative solution to a real food, a hunger issue that we've now got in our communities. Jackie, I better, I've gone beyond the time there, but thanks for all the contributions. If I couldn't answer them all fully, I've taken notes and my head swims with your ideas when I go back and I speak to ministers. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hugh. I want to thank everyone who contributed as well. But this was a real tour de force, wasn't it, from Hugh and what the Welsh Labour government is trying to do and doing, but not just the Welsh Labour government, of course, there's also the local councils and Compass and everyone working together. And that's really the Welsh model, if you like. So thank you so much, Hugh. I know you had a very, very busy day in the Senate today. So thanks for making the time to give this fantastic fireside or beachside chat. I also want to thank the Cooperative Party staff for all their help and to make tonight happen. In particular, of course, our organizer for Wales, Hugh Lewis, but also Emma, Susie and Easy, who are in the background. And remember, and please remember that the Cooperative Party conference is taking place this weekend, and Mark Drakeford, Marky Mark, or Bumpy Mark, some people call him, is a keynote speaker. And of course, Compass will also be there, Derek Walker, and quite a few of us on the call, I think, I would imagine, can meet at the Cooperative Party conference and, cooperate there and find new ideas and bring them back to Wales as well as taking them to that other place across that line, 125-mile line. So thank you very much for coming. Absolutely enjoyed it. Real privilege to be here. And keep up the great work. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night.